Okay, we are now live.
Hey, thank you. Hi, my name is Chris Ellison. This is for Community Board 10, Police and Public Safety. The agenda this evening is for a new SLA application for beer, wine, and liquor for Marcela Cucina Mexicana, SA Liquor, Wine, Beer, Cider application for Patino Ruscio, and a committee discussion on the new smoke shops in the area.
All right, Chris, I just want to share too, we have a number of attendees I know from the public who were here. I see in the attendee room, there are 13 members who are watching, so we want to say welcome. Including police officer Inga Bretson from the 68th precinct, who has joined us tonight, Officer Gandor from the 68th precinct, and Sheila Doherty, the 68th precinct community council president, and a number of residents. And just to explain how we work on the committee, there are 3 items on the agenda. If there's an issue relating to the agenda item after committee discussion, there is an opportunity. The chair will recognize any member of the public who would like to speak or comment on an application. So with that, Anthony Carabello is the first applicant presentation for Marcela Cucina Mexicana LLC, 7121 Fort Hamilton Parkway. So Anthony.
Good evening, everybody. Anthony Carabello, as Josephine said, delighted to be here. Committee members, police officer, Chairman Ellison, thank you so much for your valuable service. This is a full liquor license at 7121 Fort Hamilton Parkway. This is located, just some reference, it's next to the Popeyes, and it was the old Three Guys restaurant and coffee shop, some reference for the committee members. The applicant is Kevin Morales. His father is also on the call, Hector. They're already known in the community. They have the bagel shop, Brothers Bagel, on the same block, right down on the same side of the street. So they're well known in the community. They've been there for over 5 years. So again, it's a full liquor license, fairly small establishment. There'll be 21 tables with 40 seats. There's a small bar, it's 12 by 7, have about 8 chairs there, 7 to 8. The hours of operation are 9 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week. And I would like to interject, the real hours are probably closer to 10 during the week and 11 on weekends. But I mentioned that they might want to have a round number in the future if they want the opportunity to stay open a few extra hours to midnight, which are still very, very reasonable hours. The outreach was significant. We provided the community board with about 115 signatures. There was a proper posting done. We will anticipate having about 5 employees, and we'll make every effort to hire locally. And we'd be delighted to address any questions that the committee or the police officer may have about the establishment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Will there be any outdoor dining?
Yes, good question, Mr. Ellison. There will be the New York Open restaurants, very limited. They could maybe fit out there. The projection is 3 tables at 6 seats. As you know, we don't know how long that will go. It's indefinite. Josephine might even know a better timetable, but I've heard, it's probably going to go another year or so before either DP or DCA takes control and puts a licensing protocol in place.
Yeah, so right now, just to give an update as far as the board has been made aware that the temporary program is going to go through at least through February of 23, where rules will be promulgated and that'll go through a process. So we really don't expect a new process to be in place till well into 23. And that's also depending on litigation that's pending from some community groups. But so that's pretty much the rough time frame, and as soon as we get an update, but the temporary program is still currently active.
Thank you.
Very good. Are you going to be having any background music, speakers, or promoted events?
Yeah, so it's only background music and no promoted restaurant and Mexican cuisine. They won't give up their establishment, and their hours are very early, so no to that.
Are you going to be using the backyard?
No, the backyard right now is not in the plans.
Very good.
Chris, I just want to share with the committee members, I don't typically do this, but I live off of Fort Hamilton Parkway. And I am very familiar with the family. At one time, we lived on the same block, and they have run the bagel store for quite a number of years, very successfully. There's no adverse history at this location, which was formerly a diner, and certainly no adverse history at all associated with the bagel shop. A very hardworking family who was ever present on Fort Hamilton Parkway, and that's really reflected in the scores of petition signatures. It was kind of the talk of the town.
I could see it. There's 90
Yes. Yeah, so I counted them up. It was about 125 signatures, and most of my neighbors. So there's tremendous, support, really because of the professionalism of this business owner. I just wanted to share that with the committee members. Oftentimes we don't, we're unaware, but I just wanted to share that.
All right, I see you provided a menu. We do have a C of O. Any questions from the committee?
Chris, could you review the hours of operation, please?
The hours of operation are going to be, excuse me. The page.
It was 9 a.m. to midnight, if I can interject.
Yeah, 9 a.m. to midnight, Monday through Sunday. All right, and as the attorney stated that they usually close about 10 o'clock anyway. Mr. Caravallo. Am I correct, Mr. Caravallo?
Yeah, when they first came to me, they were looking for 10 and 11. And I said, midnight's a reasonable time. You're obviously a restaurant. So we're saying midnight, maybe on a Friday and Saturday, or for the future of business as well, but they don't plan on closing at midnight.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Any other questions from the board?
Chris, I know there's a number of attendees. I would ask if anybody wanted to speak with this application. The public can also use the hand raise function. Okay, I don't see any questions, Chris.
Okay. So, Mr. Caravallo, as you probably know, that we usually deny the application unless you agree to the following stipulations.
Yes.
All right. That there will be, the premise will operate as a restaurant. There would be no sale or consumption of alcohol on the premise until the appropriate license is issued by the SLA. The applicant will not serve or allow bring your own booze until license is obtained. The owner manager will be on site during all hours of operations. The hours of operations will be Monday through Sunday, 9 to 11, as we stated.
I think it was to midnight, Chris.
Correct.
Midnight.
I got to make notes.
Okay.
The outdoor use will only be as per the COVID protocol. Am I correct?
Yes.
There will be no smoking permitted. There will be at least 20% visible view of the establishment at eye level from the exterior. Music will be background music.
Yes.
Once the SLA license is obtained, the community board may call upon the applicant to address any concerns that may arise. The applicant agrees that should it change its method of operation, it will give notice and meet with the community board committee at least 45 days in advance of any such change. Any problems?
No, we agree to all of that.
Very good.
Chris, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the line where you had the bring your own booze, please?
Yes. The applicant will not serve or allow BYOB until license is obtained.
Isn't BYOB not allowed in New York City even with the license?
No, it is allowed with the license, sir. As long as it covers what's brought into the premises, but it's not allowed without a license.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Since we do not have a quorum, I'm sorry, Josephine.
We do have a quorum.
Oh, we do. Okay.
Yes, Lori Willis, we're joined by Lori, so now it's official. We have a quorum. Thank you, Lori.
So let's put it to a vote. All those
Chris,
in favor,
Do you need a motion first?
please.
Yes.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Sam.
I'll make the motions with the stipulations as proposed.
I'll second.
Who's second?
Yes.
Lori Willis.
Lori. All those in favor of the motion?
Raise your hands. Raise.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh, you know what? I do have the poll if we want to do that. Is this working?
Yes.
It's up, but let's see. No,
Only board
No.
members.
No, it's,
So-
no.
No.
So I can't vote, so.
Okay. All right, never mind. We did a raise of hands. That's fine. Okay, very good. Motion carries.
Well, thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody.
You too.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Thank you, you too.
Good luck to the owners.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank
night.
you. Good luck.
Hmm.
Okay, next item.
The next application is for an SLA application for Panino Rustico of Bay Ridge. This is the formerly known as Dandelion, is where the location is.
Hi, everybody. Could everybody hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, well, it's a pleasure to be back after so long.
Yo,
I-
Mr. Neil Visas, how do you spell
Yeah,
it?
Visacki.
Yep, Neil Visacki, counsel for Panino Rustico. So this is an application that you folks would definitely want to have in the confines of your community board. The applicant presently has one, the same method of operation in Staten Island. They've been open for a while. I don't know exactly how long, but it's going to mirror that method of operation. And I apologize because when I sent in the application, somehow a page of the menu was missing. So you only have the one page of the menu, but the other page is an entire page of wraps, unless I don't have, I don't know if you got it, but I don't have it in my copy. So I don't know if it ever made it to you.
This is what we
It's-
have. It's on the screen now.
Yeah, it's missing. I'm sorry, but I don't know. It's missing a whole page of all kinds of fancy items, pizza and wraps and you name it. So that was left out inadvertently. So the Lauren Pollock is one of the applicants. She'll be the manager, at least for the time being, until she hires a full-time manager, certainly who would have managerial experience in a restaurant. The hours of operation, Monday through Sunday, 9 a.m. to 11 p.m., Sunday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. I want to mention that there's no active bar there with seats or stools. It's actually going to be used as a service bar. So they're not going to have, anybody sitting at a bar. Not too big, medium size, 44 seats, 22 tables. The seal calls for 140 people. They'll have occasional private parties, naturally no outside promoters, no security. They'll follow the rules of the NYPD recommendations and nightlife. There'll be no bikes for delivery, no French doors, no open windows, no rear yard, no rooftop. They might have something, whatever's permissible with the New York open restaurants. I didn't speak to them. I know Grace had a conversation with them, but whatever, I don't think that's going to at least happen until next, till the spring breaks. Kind of like a straightforward, nice restaurant, very, very extensive menu with limited hours. Some of the music will be, now the music is live background and DJ, and I think the only reason that was put there because we learned in our experience that you just ask for a little bit more, because if there is a christening or any type of a party, afternoon party or whatever, some of these folks want to bring in their own entertainment. So that's why we kind of ask for it up front. But that's about it. Like I said, the hours are very limited. They're only open till 11 p.m. And they're running a very nice establishment here on Staten Island. Oh, they also going to be applying for one in the Rockaway. So it's just like it's not a chain, but it's going to be, they're all going to mirror each other. I don't really have anything else. We tried to fill out this application as much as possible. No community organizations were really notified because one, I can't answer that question, but two, more importantly, I would imagine that, that would be critical if you had like a bar or, some type of a club, but this is like a straightforward restaurant, and, you know, we want that in the neighborhood to, you know, to just, you know, be a nice spot for the neighborhood to kind of go socialize and eat. Okay, does anybody have any questions or anything?
Yeah, Neil, when you said there'd be a DJ, are there
Yeah.
going to be promoted events with this DJ?
No, absolutely not. That's on my list. That's always critical when I deal with clients, is absolutely.
There's not going to be a bar, it's just going to be a restaurant, correct?
Yeah, there's no bar. Yep. If you see on the diagram,
Yeah, I saw that. That's
yeah,
what-
there's no stools at the bar. It's just a service
Mhm.
bar. Doesn't really get any more restaurant than this, except for the, like I said, except for the occasional party that they would have, you know. Hi, how are you?
Any other questions from the board members?
Chris, I just want to add that, you know, the district office did do public outreach as we do with all applications. And there is no adverse history associated at this location.
It is within 500 feet of 3 other premises or 5 other premises, I see. So
Yes.
I think there's about four other places. They're all, you know, different methods of operation. One is a diner.
yeah, I understand.
I had that somewhere. They're all kind of different, so I'm not worried about passing the 500-foot rule.
Very
You
good.
know, threshold.
I mean, that location previously had SLA license with these
Yep.
other establishments around there.
Yeah, you actually have 2 pubs, Chadwick's and Cebu, so they're all different.
Okay. Any other questions from board members?
I do have a question with regard to the DJ. That's just going to be occasional or only with
Yeah.
parties?
Yeah, that's it. Like I said, if they, for parties, yep, occasional party. That's it.
Okay. So as you saw before, as we always do, you know, we deny the application unless you agree to the following stipulations. Right? The premise will operate as a restaurant. There will be no sale or consumption of alcohol on the premise until the appropriate license is issued by the SLA. Applicant will not serve or allow bring your own booze, BYOB, until license is obtained. The owner or manager will be on site during all hours of operations. The hours of operations are going to be 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. Am I correct? Monday through Saturday
Yes, and Sunday till 8 p.m.
and Sunday till 8, correct? The doors shall remain closed with any amplified music. Background recorded or music sound levels will remain below the level permitted by New York City Noise Code. There will be no smoking permitted. Once the SLA license is obtained, the community board can call upon the applicant to address any concerns that may arise. The applicant agrees, and should it change its method of operation, it will give notice to meet with the community board committee at least 45 days in advance of any such changes. Anything?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, anybody want to make a motion? Or any other,
Sandy, was that a motion? I saw your
I'll-
hand. raised.
I'll make the motion, Chris.
any makes a motion, any seconds?
I'll second it.
Elizabeth?
Okay, very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
you in favor? You're not, your camera's not on.
Aye, sorry.
Okay.
aye.
Okay,
Motion carries.
all right, Neil, good luck to you. It's not
Okay,
you.
thank you, everybody.
You're
Merry
fine.
Christmas.
Thank you.
You're
And Neil, we'll
welcome.
be voting on Monday.
Okay, thank you so much, and I
Okay,
appreciate being here. Thank you.
very good. Have a
Welcome.
good night.
Bye-bye.
I'll wait till you clear the screen.
Okay, do you see my screen up here?
Owners, yes. Puff.
Okay, so, so the next item on the agenda, and, you know, Chris and I were speaking, our chair, Jane Marie Kapitanakis. The board, the district office in the last few months have received quite a number of calls from local residents regarding what, you know, is becoming a proliferation of unlicensed smoke shops. And just to share with the committee, I mean, I put some pictures up. In total, there are about 23 locations throughout Community District 10 that were reported to us. You know, as board members may be aware, the state did enact legislation to legalize recreational marijuana with a regulatory process that is currently taking place by the state. And there's also some litigation, but to date, no licenses have been issued in the state of New York for the sale of recreational cannabis. There's all kinds of other provisions about, you know, CBD, the sale of CBD, all requiring licensing. The sale of tobacco in New York City also has very specific regulations and a cap on the number of stores that can sell tobacco. So many of these stores are selling tobacco, some are selling cannabis candies, some are outright dispensaries. I think we're up to about 4 or 5 that are clearly just dispensaries in the district. I mean, and you could see here, I just put a couple of pictures. There were just so many, I couldn't put 23 pictures up. There's a store on 86th Street that opened, Gelato. There's no ice cream being sold there. It really is exclusively cannabis. The Chief on, 73rd Street, right near Our Lady of Angels. There's Brooklyn Smokes, also on 3rd Avenue, next to where Norma's Arts and Crafts store used to be. This Grim Reefer weed that you could see, there's some weed bags right in the mirror. And, we've heard from lots of parents, lots of residents who are concerned that, the promise of regulation really does, and the new state legislation doesn't seem to have a provision that deals with unlicensed establishments. An additional concern has been that many of the smoke shops citywide, this is not only an issue limited to Community District 10, but many of these smoke shops throughout the city and right here in District 10 and within the 68th precinct have been robbed. And that's received some news attention. I just put up some stories. And I wanted to summarize for the committee members that this is a citywide issue. There are 23 locations reported in Community District 10. We have referred all of the locations for inspection at many levels with the 68th precinct, with the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. That is the agency responsible for the licensing of tobacco and e-cigarettes and vape products. We have also reported the locations to the Office of Cannabis Management. The Office of Cannabis Management is the arm that will be, of the state, kind of similar to the State Liquor Authority, that will be issuing the licenses. So I was invited to a briefing meeting at Borough Hall with the Office of Cannabis Management back in September. And at that time, a lot of the district managers and board representatives raised questions about enforcement. And it was so preliminary at that time, the presenters didn't really have details for us about enforcement, but we've learned quite a bit since then with some of our questions that have been raised. At last month's precinct community council meeting, there was quite a number of residents who also raised this concern. And the precinct commanding officer did a great job at really explaining some of the complexities of enforcement because the way the state law was written, there's a lot that's being reviewed now and discussed. This is all very new, but assuredly I can tell you that no licenses for the sale of recreational marijuana or dispensaries have been issued. So we're really left with, concerns about those that are currently operating. So the borough president had a cabinet meeting, and we learned some, additional factors both there and in speaking to some of the officials, that part of the problems of enforcement is the way the law is written. It refers to the penal code, which does enforcement by weight, and because the possession now and the decriminalization of marijuana, there isn't a specific statute in the law, which speaks to unlicensed cannabis sales. So right now, OCM has been issuing letters to ask retail stores to stop selling, basically a cease and desist letter. But the onus is on the store to shut down. The NYPD is restricted to public areas of smoke shops. There are about more than 1,000 shops citywide. The New York City Sheriff, which is a civil enforcement agency, does have enforcement powers specifically for stores without tobacco licenses can be shut down for selling tobacco. Stores selling cannabis at this point, from what I'm being told, cannot be shut down as the law is written. Smoke shops are being robbed, citywide. They threw out a statistic, some as many as 2 to 3 daily. There are some enforcement options that the mayor's office did share with us if selling unlicensed tobacco or cannabis to minors. But it seems that there, from my conversations and from speaking to other district managers, and also the offices of our local elected officials, that there needs to be something in the law to really clarify the regulation, especially as it deals with unlicensed establishments. And the concerns we're hearing from parents about, the lack of regulation, the marketing to, young people. I mean, some of the names of the stores are Puff and Pass, Stoners. They have market appeals that really are geared toward a younger customer. And just overall about, the need to have a community process. And my understanding is that is the intention. At some point, there will be, similar to the SLA, rules promulgated that the board will be able to comment on applications. But there are set numbers of, licenses that are going to be issued in the first wave with specific reviews as to who they are. But in response to the number of community calls and outreach, Chris and I were speaking, I was speaking to Jane, we thought maybe, what can we do at this point, to advocate for those changes. And we put together a draft resolution, which I shared with the members of the committee. And I don't know if you've all had an opportunity to read that or have questions about the resolution, or if you think it's a good idea, or how best to tackle the our advocacy for residents who have reached out to the community board. That's my short presentation, and I see Jill's hand is up.
Jill, unmute.
Josephine, I think it's a great idea. I did read through it, and I think you hit on all the points. I'm just a little curious why the state legislature would go ahead and approve all this without having a plan first, and a regulatory body first, and regulatory licensing first before they approved it. And I think that Andrew or Justin, I'm not sure, should speak to that.
Mm-hmm. Well, if I could say something, it was basically a state legislature, not a city council. All right.
Okay.
And when I read the bill, and it's 127 pages long, it's a lot of minutia.
Yeah.
Right. And it's basically left everything up to this Marijuana Regulatory and Taxation Act. And they left it up to the board. But they didn't put any enforcement in it. You're correct. And even in the bill, you can't be within 500 feet of a school or 200 feet of a house of worship, right? So there is clearly violations going on. But that's just my spiel.
Lori, you have your hand raised?
Sorry, yes. So I read through what was drafted. I thought that as well that it was a really, really nice job. It did address, a lot of the issues. I think that it's insane that this would even, if it was voted for, that the law would be permitted to go into effect with virtually no regulation. And especially it has been a good period of time for the various offices to get their rules and regulations in order, be it, whether it's going to be Office of Cannabis Management, not, they're going to have certain provisions in the penal law, which might involve, obviously, the sale of marijuana is not a crime, but there are certainly, you can have certain violations if you don't have the right licensing or anything like that. I think that it's insane, quite frankly, that you can have, and I mean, that Justin Browning said this, he said, you can just set up, a pot store, and these are just dealers with a storefront, and they just deal, and there's no regulation going on, and there are no tools for the police to enforce, and it's creating safety issues. To my mind, I don't understand how, we could have come so far with tobacco regulation, with hookah, with what's going on with vape, and we had done a lot of work on vaping when we were very concerned about what was going on with that. So I think the resolution is great. I would love to be able to brainstorm and come up with more ways to try to bring this to the forefront, because I have seen some of the signage on a lot of the locations, some of the ones, walking around the neighborhood, and some of the ones that you've shown in your pictures. And I really do believe, and I don't think the issue is just, the children, let's save the children, but it is appealing to children. If you look at even the signage, they look like little cartoon characters. And I just think overall, it's a big problem and probably has to be tackled on many fronts, but I am wholly in favor of the resolution as a good step forward, just to at least get our feelings out there on record.
Okay. Jill?
My husband loves gelato, and he actually went in there thinking that there was gelato sold. So, yes, kids might go in there thinking that it's an ice cream shop, and then they stumble upon that. The vaping, Juul, they had a huge lawsuit. They're probably going through bankruptcy because they were targeting young people with the types of vaping products they were selling, candy names and whatnot. So this is another issue I have with the titles and the pictures. They most certainly are targeting children. And I think that should be, that's a big problem for me. And I think that should be included in whatever you're sending in the notice.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also want to share with committee members that the Health Committee, the Senior Issues Housing, Health and Welfare Committee, is going to be doing a series of meetings with guest speakers on the education front towards young people, from Smoke Free Partnership, from Department of Health, some of the, healthcare, and Oasis, the, counselors to really give presentations that we can share with local schools, from the health perspective. But I know we're talking tonight about licensing and those protections, but we really did hear from lots of people very, very concerned, specifically, as Lori said, to the marketing, really marketing to young people. Ruth?
Yes, I regret that I didn't have the opportunity to read the entire proposal, but I do have certain comments, as I have, like everyone else, witnessed the proliferation of the opening of these establishments. And in my experience, one of the things that happens is that once a place is open, it's very, very unusual for them to get closed down, because after all, people have made investments. They're paying rent, they're fixing up the places, and they weren't told not to in their defense. And I think we're kind of going to be stuck with them, with the 23 that we have. So one question is there any way to prevent further opening in the meantime?
Well, I think, Ruth, I'm sorry. I think that, we have licensing, and when you open up a business, you have a responsibility to know what licensing is required to run your business. We had, if you have a restaurant that doesn't have a health license, you are shut down by the Department of Health. There are consumer protections that need to be made. We had one right on the corner of us, a health, an eating and drinking establishment that did not have a license to
Right.
sell food was shut down. I think that we need to certainly advocate that, an establishment can sell other things as a convenience store. They don't have to sell marijuana. They can operate as a business with proper licensing. But when we put rules and laws into effect without enforcement, what is the incentive to abide by the licensing with all the regulatory requirements that come with it? And, when you talk about consumer protections of the sale of a product that, has direct health implications, that you want to make sure is, there are certain provisions in the law even about the product and protections for the consumer. So I think with alcohol, as an example too, if you have an establishment that's selling alcohol, there is a provision in the law, and we've had some places that have been shut down. We've had some where we have to continue to advocate for enforcement, but there needs to be, for those who are licensed and following the rules, for those applicants who are also investing, I feel, to have a system that is equitable, that is clear, and there are guidelines. And if you don't follow those rules, there has to be, strict enforcement. I don't see how else, consumer protection and public safety can be realized without that. Lori?
Sorry. Yes, I agree. And to a point that you made, Josephine, the fact of the matter is, when this, and we are where we are today, which I, again, find astounding, is that when this was brought up, when the legalization of marijuana, and we were all they discussed this going on, and we discussed it, it was broached in terms of there would be specific licenses given out to specific dispensaries, to specific people, that they would be chosen under certain criteria, that it would be regulated. We were told, it would just be like a liquor store. Well, you can't sell that. You can't just go around and sell liquor. Why would this be any different? And the fact of the matter is that they have done none of that, absolutely none of that. They just repealed the law saying, hey, and more or less, with very slim provisions, basically repealed the law and said, hey, go set up, go sell marijuana. Okay. And in essence, because there is no enforcement, then what's the point of having a law? You violate it in theory, right? And it is unfair. Similarly, to Ruth's point, it is unfair to people who thought maybe that they weren't doing anything wrong and that they did make an investment and that it was okay. But I can't really believe that anyone actually made that investment without having any expectation that there would come a time that there would be regulations that they would have to comply with, and certain licensing provisions and criteria that they would have to meet. And maybe they are unwitting, people who are unwittingly getting injured in this. But I think that, I don't know if it's within our power to really do anything, but I certainly know that it's within our power to bring the issue to the forefront and to make noise about it so that people are aware of it and they're listening to it. Because I do think that having these unlicensed establishments operating is, as Josephine said, it's already bringing in more crime, because people are just going in and robbing these establishments. And I think it's terrible. So I think that anything that we can do to bring attention to the issue so that it is rectified in an appropriate manner. But we can't make laws, unfortunately. If any of you have any good ideas on how to get this done or bring attention to it, maybe brainstorming might be one of the best things we can do right now, I think, in addition to the proposed document.
Right, great. So, Sandy?
Josephine?
Yeah, Josephine, Thank you. Would it be possible? I know that our elected officials are always invited to our meetings. Would it be possible that we can reach out to Senator Gennardis's office and have him, find out if he's available at our next meeting for him to come down to our community board meeting? And let's have a dialogue with him. Let him explain, since this is a state issue that was that enacted all this. Let him explain to us how this all came about, and is there maybe something in the pipeline that he knows that we don't. Let's ask him some questions regarding how this all happened from the state level, and how it got to this point where we're having stores open without regulation. I think we should find out if he's available, and let him know that we need more information on this from a state level.
Okay, Judy and then Jill.
Oh, yes, hello. Over the years, we've had, when there were things that were this even less serious than this, we had, we would have a night where we would, host a meeting in a venue like a school or an auditorium somewhere. I mean, I think, there's enough I'm sure there's enough outcry that people, but I think as to what Sandy said, we need to get information, before we do something like that. But I think that should be the direction we should go to,
Yeah, and I'm going to say that both, I do know that both Councilmember Brannan and Senator Gennardis did write letters, as did Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, about seeking enforcement. The state is not currently in session, doesn't go back in session until January. So we certainly will reach out to, the senator's office. Our meeting is Monday. Maybe him or a representative can come and speak to the board on Monday. With more specifics, but they've both, I know that Councilman Brannan has been interviewed, by, it's been in various news articles and as well as, television. Jill, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to suggest. I mean, the next route is to, get it into some kind of newspaper, or, I'm sure we're not the only neighborhood that's dealing with it.
It's been written
citywide.
about. No, it's been written about, and, that's the consensus. There's, a need for enforcement. An enforcement provision. There's some questions that are in the chat. I know there are a number of members of the public who are here. I'll just, share their questions. Can we know who voted for the marijuana legalization? That is public record. That is on the New York State. That should be on the New York State Senate and Assembly websites. It's MURTA. I can actually, since you're an attendee, I can share that link with you. The second question is, since there is no regulations, is it best to have these stores shut down till the laws are in place? I think, we've spoken to that. If there are any attendees who have a question for the committee or who would like to speak, you can use the hand raise function and I'll call upon you. Or you could write a question in the chat. What about, okay, there's another question that was raised. What about landlords? Well, right now, the state liquor authority requires that on the application that the landlord of the property is, added for information on the application. I don't know of a specific provision right now that would hold landlords responsible for, issuing, a lease to an establishment that's unlicensed. I don't think there is such a, provision in this statute.
There was something in the statute, if I can interject, that they could not discriminate, landlords could not discriminate on leasing.
Okay.
All right.
I do have an attendee with a hand raised, so I'm going to allow Michelle Magnus. Michelle, would you like to?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So I'm going to read what I wrote. Thank you, Committee Chair, District Manager Josephine Beckman, Community Board 10, members of the Bay Ridge community and the 68th Precinct for letting me speak today. I believe in the fundamental right to choose what we do to our bodies, whether it's abortion, medical decisions, cannabis, and so on. However, when our government makes laws, our youth should always be at the forefront of each of these policies. The maximum length of a school speed zone is 1,320 feet from school grounds. But under the new cannabis law, a cannabis business is allowed to open 500 feet away from school grounds. How does this make sense? You tell us that the safety of our children matters, yet this law says otherwise. Might as well stop wasting resources on these speed cameras if we're not going to take the safety of our children seriously. There are several cannabis storefronts in Bay Ridge that are operating unlicensed and illegally. They are breaking the law, being unlicensed and advertising to children like a store called Gelato. And there's no one enforcing this. What are we doing about it now? If these businesses are willing to open unlicensed and break the law now, then they will be willing to break the law when they're legal and sell to minors. We have minors already illegally smoking cannabis in public bathrooms at the Fort Hamilton High School playground. The current laws aren't stopping this nor preventing this. If anything, these new laws are giving them more access to these drugs. How is this protecting our youth? In 1 year alone, weapons have been found around the school grounds and playground, and drug usage is constant. My daughter ran out of the bathroom with 5 teenage boys smoking weed inside. What if they tried to touch her, rob her, or rape her? What if that was your child? We cannot continue to make the laws that aren't protecting our youth and not worth enforcing if there's no consequences in place. And we need to start enforcing the laws that are in place. I implore the precinct to enforce the current laws as set forth in the cannabis laws. I also encourage our city council members and the state legislature to go back to the drawing board and rewrite the cannabis laws to better protect our youth. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you. Anyone else from the public would like to speak? Okay, I don't see any. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Ivana Albanese Rizzo. Ivana, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, I just want to thank you all for bringing this up. And it's just very frustrating that it's been months that this has been happening and 23 establishments have opened. I've talked for months to the precinct. I've talked to Justin Brandon's office, who's actually been very helpful. I've actually spoken to Gennardus as well, who was not as helpful, basically saying that Justin Brandon's office was running with this issue. And we've gone to the 68 precinct meetings as well. I'm just flabbergasted that, again, unlicensed operations are here in the neighborhood and nobody can stop it. Everyone's raising their hands and saying, well, there's nothing we can do. We have to wait for this Office of Cannabis Development, who I've also contacted and will give no information other than these places have actually been under investigation, whatever that means. I was just wondering, your resolution, District Manager, what would that actually precipitate? Who does that get sent to and what becomes of it?
Yeah, I'm going to put it up on the screen. Essentially, the resolution that we drafted would go to the state elected officials and specific to creating clear guidelines for the enforcement of unlicensed establishments. There needs to be clear language because what we're hearing from the enforcement agencies, at least to this point, that the enforcement of unlicensed establishments is not clearly written in the law. There are restrictions for what the NYPD can and cannot do. And it's been very frustrating for us here at the district office. For many people who have called the office, we've really been having a hard time really getting through, maybe because it's the newness of the law, at first we thought, and then from what we're hearing from every agency is that the law needs to be tightened up, that there needs to be clear language specific to dealing with unlicensed establishments. There are provisions in the law that I'm hearing from some of my colleagues about, operations for minors, if there is, if inspections reveal that there are minors in the store that are purchasing. But again, it's not very clear cut. And I think that, in conversations that we've had, and even the one we've had here tonight, the resolution is specific to calling upon the New York State Legislature. That was the body that created the statute that created the legalization and set up this Office of Cannabis Management. And there needs to be very specific, clear, black and white. I keep saying this. It should be very clear. It shouldn't be vague. When you're speaking about the licensing of cannabis with specific regulatory provisions in the statute, for there not to be a provision about how to tackle unlicensed establishments swiftly is just mind-boggling to me and so many of us. Ivana, you were at the precinct council meeting, and the special operations lieutenant was speaking about what's currently in the penal law, because you're allowed to have, marijuana, recreational marijuana is not illegal, but the enforcement provisions deal with weight, deal with verifying the substance. It's has nothing to do with, are you licensed? Where is your license? If you're not licensed, then you shouldn't be operating, period. So that's what the resolution, I'm going to put it up, and we'll just go through it quickly so you know what it is. And we'll circulate that in advance too. Right now, it was sent to committee members in draft form so we could all work on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Ivana. That's all I see in terms of the public. So I will share the screen and just go through the draft pretty quickly. So the Community Board 10 resolution calling upon the New York State Legislature to create clear enforcement provisions for unlicensed commercial/retail sale of marijuana/cannabis products. Whereas the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, MRTA, was signed into law on March 31st, 2021. And whereas MRTA legalized adult use 21 years of age and older, the sale of recreational marijuana in New York State. And whereas MRTA also created a new Office of Cannabis Management, OCM, to comprehensively regulate adult use, medical, and hemp cannabis. And whereas the new Office of Cannabis Management, OCM, is charged with issuing licenses and developing regulations outlining how and when business can participate. And whereas the New York State Cannabis Control Board, the CCB, is the approval and oversight body of the Office of Cannabis Management. And whereas OCM provided a geographical breakdown of the maximum number of conditional adult use retail dispensaries, CAURD, and whereas up to 150 licenses will be awarded across 14 regions of the state in the first round, with most concentrated in New York City boroughs, with 19 CAURD dispensaries slated for Brooklyn. And whereas no retail licenses or permits have been issued within New York City for the sale of cannabis by the Office of Cannabis Management. And whereas CCB also approved a series of proposed rules for marijuana packaging, labeling, advertising, and testing. And whereas the state also issued licenses for the creation, will also issue licenses for the creation of cannabis delivery businesses. And whereas more than 25 unlicensed smoke shops are selling, marketing CBD, cannabis, and weed products are now opening in Community District 10. And whereas the NYPD has already visited and mapped over 1,050 shops citywide. And whereas the level of product regulation, safety, consumer protection, advertising, and marketing to children are not realized in unlicensed establishments. And whereas the penal law does not provide an enforcement mechanism to penalize or shutter unlicensed retail cannabis dealers. And whereas MRTA does not bar unlicensed sales in commercial establishments from obtaining future licensing. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of Community Board 10 call upon the legislature of the state of New York to immediately enact legislation to amend MRTA and or the penal law to enable the Office of Cannabis Management to order the closure of unlicensed commercial establishments involved in the unlicensed sale of cannabis, including the unlicensed delivery of cannabis, in order to ensure proper regulation of the product, consumer protection, and safety, and provide clear provisions to prevent any commercial establishment involved in the unlicensed sale from obtaining any future licenses. So that's the resolution, the draft. If there are any changes to that, anyone wants to make? I thought perhaps just adding a clause, because we heard this recurring theme over and over again from residents, maybe speak specifically about marketing to children. Barbara?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, if they closed at an establishment, is there anything in there that's going to stop them from opening again, like, another establishment? Maybe they should be on the, do not hire list or something like that.
Yeah, well, that was why that one sentence is there. And I think Councilman Brandon has said this. Right now, there's no provision. If you're operating right now illegally and you've applied for a legal license, you should be off the consideration list because you haven't complied with the law. If you haven't complied now with the law, what's the expectation of compliance in the future? So that's why that one sentence was added in.
Right. I really don't understand why they didn't have these provisions in it. Sort of like when you give a liquor license and you can't bring your own alcohol. Like, you read in some of the restaurants in the neighborhood, these new restaurants, people are going next door and buying a beer or a bottle of wine and bringing it into the restaurant. That's wrong also. And there are fines and there are watchdogs for that. And I think that should have been extended for this also.
I agree. Sandy?
It appears to me from hearing all this, that the state only thought about making cannabis legal, and the only thought process was, how are we going to tax these businesses so we get more tax money into the state? They thought about nothing else. They thought nothing about public safety or children or anything like that, because they clearly weren't ready to do this. And the only thing they thought about was how are we going to get the tax money, and that's the only thing they thought about, and it's disgraceful.
All right. In one of the news stories, it had the owner of the chief, the 73rd Street location, who said, "I'm willing to pay taxes." So right now there is no tax levy. If you have an unlicensed business, what's the recording mechanism for taxes? So that's another issue. And that's an issue we're seeing too with the unlicensed tobacco. There's a cap on the sale of tobacco licenses, and we're also seeing shops that are opening without tobacco licensing. We've come so far in that I've been speaking with the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, who have been out and they've issued, some violations. But what do we say to the merchants who are following the rules, who are applying for the licenses, who are complying with the tax regulations, who are complying with the provisions of the license to sell tobacco? When you have competitors nearby who are not following the rules, it's very frustrating. I mean, I've spoken to some of those merchants who are not happy, and they ask a question that I cannot answer. Why are we applying for a license if there is no enforcement if you don't have one? It's important that this needs to be addressed. So, Mr. Chairman, do we want to present this, the draft resolution to the community board? We would need a recommendation of the committee.
So,
Do you need a motion?
yes, we need a motion.
All right, I'll make the motion to present it to the community board.
Anyone second?
Barbara just
Barbara
seconded.
Galucci.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
In favor.
Okay, thank you, Lori.
I don't think
All right.
anybody is opposed.
Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you.
That's it on our agenda.
Sam, do you want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion made.
Thank you all. Have a good night.